So, welcome everybody.
You.
So we're going to start off with our Elul, a little bit of an exploration into the month of Elul, because next week, Monday night, we're already going to be in the month of Elul. So this way you get prepared. You're not going to be caught flat-footed, as they say. You're going to be prepared and ready for the month of Elul. And so we're going to start off with a very special book that the Rebbe wrote. That was the first book he was asked to write by his father-in-law. And it's called Hayom Yom. And some of you may be familiar with it. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to mute everybody. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself at any time. We just don't want to have accidental noise in the background. Makes it much easier for everybody. And by the way, I did want to welcome Joel here. By the way, are you a Levi, Joel? Not a Levi. Okay.
No, I'm not.
We have a family that's Klein, and they're Levites. So.
So very
welcome all the way from Chicago. Yes, Klein is a Levi family name. Yeah. So let me share the screen now, and we're going to study this together. So this is from the Rebbe's book, Hayom Yom, and the year that this was written, this was the day that this was, it was the Shabbat before Elul began. So it was Shabbat. It was the 27th of Av, which is actually today. So it's the same Hebrew date as today, but then it was a Shabbat. And so the idea is that this was the thought for the Shabbat before the month of Elul begins. And here he goes. The month of Elul is the month of reckoning. In the material world, if a businessman is to conduct his affairs properly and with great profit, he must periodically take an accounting and correct any deficiencies. Likewise, in the spiritual avoda, service, or work of serving God, throughout the year, all Israel are occupied with studying Torah, doing mitzvot, and developing and expressing good traits. The month of Elul is the month of reckoning, when every Jew, each commensurate with his abilities, whether scholar or businessman, must make an accurate accounting in his soul of everything that occurred in the course of the year. Each must know the good qualities in his service of God and strengthen them. He must also be aware of the deficiencies in himself and in his service and correct these. Through this excellent preparation, one merits a good and sweet year, materially and spiritually. So that's the Rebbe's intro into the month of Elul that he wrote in 1943. Now, it wasn't his ideas. He was taking them mostly from his father-in-law's letters, writings, talks, and picking out little pieces that were good for each day. And so as we're getting closer to the month of Elul, the Rebbe is pointing out what the month of Elul is really all about. It's a month of reckoning, and he compares it to a business. And so what do they say? The worst thing you can do in a business is to not look after your books and not check on what's going on with your bank account or what's going on at all. That's the best way to destroy any business. So to be on top of things and to have a really good CFO who's checking on the financials and making sure that everything is in order is very, very important. And so in a similar way, the month of Elul is exactly the same idea. We need to take stock. Can't just fly by the seat of your pants. You got to take stock. It's a real thing. So if we look at the relationship between us and God as whatever, it's really, and there's nothing really to think about. But if you think about it as a serious relationship with God, well, then there's stock taking and there's real introspection that needs to take place. So that's the first thing. So the fact that we have to have, we take our businesses very serious, we take our finances very serious because there are real consequences to not taking care of it. If you don't have money, you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your family. If you have money, you can enjoy your life more. You can do lots of good things with it. So therefore, we take our finances rather serious. But when it comes to our relationship with God, I remember we had a gentleman, an elderly gentleman, who used to come in. Pinchas Chaim. He would come in, and some of you have met him, Paul Rubenstein of blessed memory. And he was a feisty character, and he had lots and lots of stories. Very, very tough person. I mean, he had terrible back pain, but you would never know. He was a real trooper. And I guess he had seen somewhere on the internet this line that prayer is not a spare tire. And every time he would see me, he'd say, "Rabbi, remember, prayer is not a spare tire." And what he meant was, and what the meaning of that statement was, is that spare tire is something that you need only in a case of emergency. You don't need a spare tire on a regular day. But if prayer is a real relationship between me and God, well, then it's not for emergencies. God is not there for emergencies. God is there for always. He's there. It's the relationship with God. So it's from that vantage point that we take a look at Elul as a serious way of taking our relationship with God to the next level. And therefore, all year long, if you're busy, thinking about your life to the point where you're going through your finances every single day and you're checking, how are we doing and so on, at some point you're not getting any business done. You're too busy, just looking at the bottom line. So there has to be a time. Obviously, you have to have accounting every day a little bit. In the Jewish tradition, Thursday is the day of reckoning for the week. So Thursday night is the reckoning for the whole week. And then Rosh Chodesh is really the reckoning for the month. And then Rosh Elul is the reckoning for the whole year. And the truth is, every night before we go to sleep, it's the reckoning for that day. So if you think about it, every day there's a micro, looking into and checking and seeing how our accounting is doing. And then there is the weekly, then there is the monthly, and then there is the annual. And so in relationships, that would be a really good thing, checking every day. And then let's review how we're doing this week. And then how was this month? And how are we doing on an annual basis? And so in this way, we're constantly updating, checking in. What I've noticed in my relationships, especially the ones that I am closest to, is that if too long goes by without checking in with one another, then things seemingly tend to go south. So if you didn't check in on a regular basis, that's a problem. And you have to constantly be checking in, but then once in a while you need to make a real assessment of what's going on. So it's a very, very important, if you take your relationship serious, to give it the proper attention that it requires, that it needs, the love that it needs. The Rebbe would spend a half hour every single day with his Rebbetzin, with Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, and they would drink tea together, they would review the day together, every single day, no matter what. And the Rebbe told his doctor, Dr. Weiss, that time that he spends with the Rebbetzin is as important to him and as set in stone as is putting on tefillin every day. In other words, putting on tefillin is a biblical commandment. The Rebbe saw spending that time with your spouse, checking in and making sure that you're, connecting as important as the mitzvah of putting on the biblical commandment for the man to put on tefillin every day. We had a very interesting, for those of you who missed it, we had a very interesting evening with Dr. Barbara and Dr. Michael, and we had Rabbi Lane on where we talked about relationships. And Rabbi Lane, in his, who wrote the book, wrote a very, very interesting book on the differences between men and women, that men are into the 3 Ps and the women are into the 3 As. And he pointed out something very, very interesting that I thought would be really helpful to really explore. And that is that in the Torah, we only find the men commanded to take care of their wives. We don't find anywhere in the Torah that women are commanded to take care of their husbands. And the same thing with the ketubah. It's all on the men. Everything is on the men. The man has to provide for his wife, and the man has to do this, and the man has to do that. And if he doesn't, then he's in trouble. He's the one who has to pay. We don't find that the Torah ever gives the woman any responsibility. None. Zippo. She no instructions. She's never told that she has to take care of her husband. And his answer was very, very beautiful, and that is that the answer is very simple. Women don't have to be told. They don't have to be told to check in with their husbands. They do that. They're going to do that automatically, naturally, at least the feminine. And the men are the ones, the masculine needs to be taught, needs to be, developed in that sense. And so obviously we can all work on our relationships and better them, but the more masculine we are, the more we have to work on our ability to be there in our relationships. So if anybody has any questions on that, go right ahead. Otherwise, we're going to move on to some other aspects of the month of Elul, which is coming up.
I just wanted to say that I think when you use the word reckoning, it can sort of have like a distancing sound, almost like, it's time to pay the piper kind of thing. I think my sense of Elul is a sense of intimacy. It's like a renewal of intimacy with God. So it just has a different flavor or whatever.
Thank you, Alita, very much. That's why we love having you on here, always putting it into perspective. And
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I want to agree with Alita that I always think about, ever since I learned it, I always think about how mitzvah and tzavta are from the same root. So it's all about getting closer to God.
Yes, exactly. So I was just reading to you the Hayom Yom of the Rebbe, and it's important that we know all the different aspects of the month of Elul. So I was just quoting to you from the Rebbe in the Hayom Yom. Now we're going to do a little bit of what Alita brought up. So thank you, Alita, for perfect lead-in. And so this is from Chabad.org, a brief history of the month of Elul. And there were some very, very special things that happened during this month. This month is an extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary month. There were so many things that happened way back in the day in our history, and we all know that history is simply an insight into what's going on right now. So history is not past. History in Jewish tradition is present. So when we read the story of the Bible, of the Exodus from Egypt, we're not reading a story that happened a long time ago. We're reading what's happening right now. So right now, at this time of the month, at this time of the year, what happened back then is what's happening right now. And it's actually because it goes in the other way around. Why is it that the Jewish people went out of Egypt in the time they went out is because that's the time of Exodus. Why is it that the month of Elul has all of the historical things that happened in the month of Elul? Because that's what the energy of the month of Elul really is. Yes, Alita?
Now, I was just thinking that part of the insight that came when we were studying Tisha B'Av was that, that it seems like it has a progression. And so I'm just thinking whether we can look at Elul in terms of the month of Av as well, whether not just to look at it in and of itself, but as a follow-up to the month of Av.
Right, so it actually very beautiful. It starts actually with Passover. So it's actually, you'll see how it ties in. So the tie-in is as follows. The Jewish people leave Egypt on the 15th of Nisan, and then they are told that 50 days later they're going to get the Torah on Mount Sinai. 50 days later they get the Torah on Mount Sinai, and then Moses comes down from the mountain and smashes the tablets because the Jewish people had already sinned with the golden calf. The next day, he goes back up on the mountain. Now, what's the day that he came down from the mountain and smashed the tablets? That's the 17th of Tammuz, which is the day that the sadness of the Jewish calendar begins. So the Jewish calendar has a sad 3 weeks. It starts on the day Moses comes down from the mountain and smashes it on the ground. So every single year, we have this great joy during Passover. We have this great joy on Shavuot when we get the Torah. And then 40 days later, on the 17th of Tammuz, we mourn. We're sad. And we're, in a sense, what we're sad is that we lost the tablets. That beautiful connection that we had with God at Mount Sinai was shattered. Shattered dreams, shattered hopes. It all shatters on the 17th of Tammuz. And so Moses then goes up on the mountain on the 18th of Tammuz, the next day, and he's up there for 40 days and 40 nights, pleading with God to forgive the Jewish people. So it's already a time of renewal, of repentance, of change, of coming back. So if you think about it, actually it starts even before Tisha B'Av, even before the whole month of Av. We're going all the way back to the month of Tammuz, where it's literally 40 days after the Jewish people get the Ten Commandments, and already we have to start in repairing that relationship. And so the whole idea of teshuvah, the whole idea of we need to make this right, we need to straighten this out, we need to fix this, begins exactly then, 40 days after the Jewish people get the Torah, and we fall down, and Moses then goes back up on the mountain on the 18th of Tammuz, and he stays up there until the day before the month of Elul. So basically he's up there for 40 days and 40 nights. He comes down, it's the end of Av. So he's up on the mountain for the entire month of Av, plus the 12 days of Tammuz. And so he comes down towards the end of the month of Av. And then God says to him, okay, I want you to now go and cut new stones and come back up on the mountain so that we can now remake the Ten Commandments and you can bring them back down again. And so he spends the next 40 days, which is the entire month of Elul and Rosh Hashanah, up on the mountain. So the first Rosh Hashanah that the Jews are in the desert, Moses is not with them for Rosh Hashanah. Talk about a pandemic being different. That was a very different year, Rosh Hashanah. Moses was up on the mountain. The Jews were on their own. Now, they didn't have a tabernacle yet. They didn't have a temple yet. So it was a very, very different Rosh Hashanah. And then what happens is they wait for Moses, and Moses comes down with the second set of tablets on what day? On Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is the day when not only are we forgiven, but we're actually received the second set of the tablets. So if we look at our screen here, it's going to the brief history of the month of Elul. The origins of the month of Elul as a special divine grace and mercy go back to the time of Moses in the year 2448 from creation, the first year. And it was 7 weeks after they got the Torah. 40 days later, God tells them they started worshiping the golden calf. And so he comes down and he smashes. He goes back up for 40 days to plead with God on Israel's behalf. And then on the early morning of the first of Elul, Moses once again ascended Mount Sinai, taking within the stone tablets he had hewn by divine command. And then he comes down for the third time on the 10th of Tishrei, on Yom Kippur, with the second set. So that's what's going on in the month of Elul, just a little bit of a brief history. But there's also other things that are going on in the month of Elul, and we've talked about this before, and that is the king is in the field, and this is the beautiful teachings of the Alter Rebbe, who introduces us to this idea of that the king is in the field. So when we talk about the greatness of this month, we're talking about some really incredible things that are going on, and that is that it is during this month. Here it is. Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi explains the paradox of Elul with the following metaphor. The king's usual place is in the capital city in the royal palace. Anyone wishing to approach the king must go through the appropriate channels in the palace bureaucracy and gain the approval of a succession of secretaries and ministers. He must journey to the capital and pass through the many gates, corridors, and antechambers that lead to the throne room. His presentation must be meticulously prepared, and he must adhere to an exacting code of dress, speech, and mannerism upon entering into the royal presence. However, there are times when the king comes out to the fields outside the city. At such times, anyone can approach him. The king receives them all with a smiling face and a radiant countenance. The peasant behind his plow has access to the king in a manner unavailable to the highest ranking minister in the royal court when the king is in the palace. The month of Elul, says Rabbi Shneur Zalman, is when the king is in the field. And so this is a very, very special time when God is available to us in the field. Now it's interesting that he contrasts the way the king is when the king is in his palace and when the king is in the field. And I'm sure that to Alita and to Jerry and to others, it seems a bit not so romantic and not so, you have to go through all these people in the court, and then you have to be very exacting. You have to be very careful in what you say and what you do. It seems very, not the easygoing, lovey-dovey, kind of feel. The month of Elul seems like to be the right feel, but we're working our way towards Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is when it's going to be in the palace, and the palace is going to be very kind of, I don't want to say restricted, but very, what's the word I'm looking for? Choreographed. It has to be very proper, and you don't see a lot of emotion there, or a lot of closeness in that sense. And this is very, very important in a relationship. So I just want to focus on this part of the relationship because, and that is that in relationships, we need to always have two sides to it: love and respect. So love is attraction. Respect is distance, right? So when I'm feeling far away from you, I feel attraction. When I'm close to you, I feel like, I feel awe. I feel a sense of fear, a sense of awesomeness. And so that's so as I get closer to you, I'm getting closer. The closer I am to you, the more I realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot relying on me, a lot of responsibility. And then when I'm far away, I get pushed away, then I feel like, oh my gosh, I want to come closer. I can't wait to be there. So that's the the tug and the pull of love and respect, or ahava and yirah. So they go in opposite directions. So as one pulls me in, the other one pushes me away. Does that make sense? Are you following me? Good. I see Jerry is following me. Anybody else following me here? Good. Okay. We're getting a little bit of okay, good. So in the relationship, the danger of love, what's the danger of love? I'm attracted, I get closer and closer and closer, and then what happens is I become, I take the relationship for granted. I start taking the person for granted. So that's the danger that all relationships have, is that you start being taken for granted or not so much respect. And so that's why we need both. We always need these two sides. On the one hand, in love, on the other hand, respect. And that's very, very important in all relationships. And so that's the idea here, that in our relationship with God, it's the same thing. And not only that, but an infinite amount more. Why? Because it's very, very easy for us to make the mistake of anthropomorphizing, which is a fancy word that I learned as a kid when I was studying Tanya, or studying the back of the Tanya, and I had no idea what that word meant, and I had to look it up in the dictionary. So I think, certain parts of my vocabulary came from trying to study the Tanya in English. So anthropomorphizing means giving God human qualities. And so when we know our relationships, and then we're supposed to, is that an earthquake or something? Certainly felt like it. So when, where was I? Before I got shaken up over here.
Are you still feeling it?
No. That was weird.
California.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You're funny. So where was I, Michael? Oh, thank you. So we're supposed to, in a sense, it says that Mipsari echze Eloka. From my flesh, I can therefore now know God. So I know God by observing myself. I learn more about God through learning about myself. So we're supposed to do that, and we realize that, as it says in Psalms, that the one who created sight can certainly see. The one who created hearing can certainly hear. So we know a lot about God by what we can do. So if we can love, where did we get it from? We got that from God. But the problem then is that we then project ourselves onto God. And unfortunately, we do that in our relationships too, where we impose our own ideas on our spouse or our family or people that we meet. And so that's the problem. That we do is that we then project onto other people. Because I think this must be the way, if this is the way I feel, I'm sure everybody feels the same way, or they should feel this way. I was talking to someone recently, and this person could not understand their spouse. Like, I can't understand. Why would my spouse do it this way? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The person wasn't exactly looking for my input, so I didn't give any input. But I wanted to say was, your spouse is not you. That's the way you operate, but not everybody operates like that. And you have to appreciate that there's other people, and other people operate differently. But it's a common thing in relationships that we impose ourselves on the other person. And we can easily do the same thing with God, much more than we do that with other human beings. Because God is, as much as we think God is greater than us, we have no idea how much God is greater than us. Which is why we're constantly being told how great God is. It's not because God needs us to know how great he is. It's so that we can appreciate the distance. And therefore, it puts the relationship in balance. So the same thing with your spouse. You always need to be told your spouse is infinitely greater than you'll ever understand. It just makes the relationship so much better. It makes the relationship so much better when you have that kind of awe, that kind of respect, and that kind of, now obviously there isn't an infinite difference between you and your spouse. It seems like it's infinite, but it's not infinite. It just feels like it. But in our relationship with God, it truly is infinite. And so it's very important in relationships to keep that, to keep that balance and to make sure that it stays intact. Am I being clear? Is this making sense? Okay, good. Excellent. And therefore, that's why to me, it's, on the one hand, you read certain parts and it sounds a little, not so lovey-dovey. And then you read some parts and they're very lovey-dovey. And it's like, well, which one is it? And the answer is, it's both. It's both. So when you're feeling distant from God, it's important for you to feel how much God loves you, and he comes out to the field and he meets you at the plow and he sees you in where you are. You don't have to, there's no dressing up, and God is just right there with you. And then when you're right there close with God, it's important for you to know, hey, be careful. Hey, respect. This is a holy place. And in a holy place, you don't take it for granted. You're not flippant. You're not you have to be very, very respectful in a sense of in a place of awe. And so it's like your parents are not your friends. Not trying to be friends with your children. They should love you and you should love them, but there has to be a sense of respect. The Torah says it. The Torah insists that there has to be ahava and there has to be yirah. There has to be kavod, there has to be respect, and there has to be yirah. There has to be awe, and there has to be love. Well, not so much love, but you have to appreciate them, you have to do things for them, and you also have to make sure not to take them for granted, not to become their friend. So friendly, yes. Friend, no. With friends, you act a certain way, and the same thing goes with the spouse. Your spouse is not your friend. They should be they should be close to you, but not a friend that you pal around with. You always have to have that respect because the relationship is so close. You have to protect it, you have to respect it, and be very, very careful. And if you've lived long enough in any relationship, you know how important that is. Because it's exactly in that, because you're so close and because there's such intimacy there, therefore you must protect it even more than you would normally protect a relationship. And so when you're in God's home, when you're in God's palace, oh boy, you have to be uber careful, very, 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 very careful.
Rabbi?
Yes, Elise.
It seems to me that even in the field, though, God is coming to us. It's not that we're going to him. He's coming to us. And from what you were saying, it seems like God came to us even while Moshe was up on the mountain. So even when the people were kind of recovering from all that had gone on with the golden calf and all that, God came to them. And is the king in the field then God coming to us versus we going to God? Maybe.
Very, very good. Very good. Very good question. So the answer is God came to us in the story of Passover. That's when God comes to us. What happens in the month of Elul, God doesn't come to us as God. God comes to us in a slightly different form, not as the king. So that's the difference. So when God comes to us and takes us out of Egypt, he comes with an outstretched arm. It's like the knight in shining armor who comes in and saves the day and takes such good care and literally you're standing there going, oh my gosh, I am in, this is someone that I just want to be with for the rest of my life. So falling in love with God was very, very easy in the month of Nisan. We were head over heels for God, and therefore the romanticism of Nisan is that we were running after God. We chased him into the desert. It's like a lover who's so so caught up with the one that they love that they're literally chasing after them, running out, going anywhere. We'll go anywhere. Yeah, you want to go in the desert? No problem. No food? No problem. No water? No problem. We're coming after you. And that's what we say on Rosh Hashanah. Lech tech acharai bamidbar. We start off by saying, Ko yomar Hashem, zocharti lach chesed neorayach. Ko yomar Hashem, zocharti lach chesed neorayach. Ahavas tilu b'yisai. Ahavas tilu b'yisai. Oy lechtech acharai bamidbar. Oy v'yeretz lo yizaru. Oy lechtech acharai bamidbar. Oy v'yeretz lo yizaru. So Koyamar Hashem, so says God. So charti lach, I remember chesed neurayach, the love of our childhood when we were young and in love. Ahavas kilulei sayach, the love of our first coming together, our marriage. Lechtech acharai bamidbar, you ran after me into the desert, the eretz lo yizarua, into a land that nothing grows. Remember those days? Remember when we were head over heels? Yeah, I remember those days. And then we had a falling out. And we kind of fell off the wagon, and then we needed to ask for forgiveness, which is what we did in the month of Av. We asked for forgiveness. But then came the month of Elul. And the month of Elul, God didn't show up as the mighty knight in shining armor. He doesn't show up with his whole entourage. He's not there to impress us. It's not the impressive God, which is why whenever God shows up as the king, no work is allowed. So on the holiday, when God shows up as the king, you're doing work? When God visits you, what are you doing? You're going to work? You cancel all your appointments and you come to be with the king. That's disrespectful to the king if you are working while the king shows up. We shut all the businesses shut down. The king is here. That's it. We're on vacation. So every time there's a holiday, it's because God has shown up as the king. Oh wow, God is here as the king. Okay, shut everything down. No work. But during the month of Elul, God shows up and work is allowed. There's no restriction on work during the month of Elul except on Shabbat, which is because again God is showing up on Shabbat. But on a regular day of Elul, no, you can do work, no problem. So what's going on? The answer is because God is not showing up as the king with all of his clothing on and with his crown, everything like that. The king is in the field, meaning he's meeting us in our place, which is why it doesn't overwhelm us. It inspires us. So what happened was on Nisan, when God came to take us out of Egypt, we were overrun, overwhelmed. It was just awesome to see God show up and do the miracles and knock out the Egyptians and take us across the sea. Oh my gosh, that was very impressive. And therefore, we took our breath away. During the month of Elul, it's not like that. Here, God is showing up and saying, it's a much more subtle and therefore doesn't overwhelm us and allows us to therefore find God rather than God kind of imposing on us. So he doesn't impose. And that's what's interesting. I'll show you an interesting thing my son Mendel pointed out to me that the Rebbe points out as well. I mean, that's where Mendel got it from. And that is that the Alter Rebbe says here, however, there are times when the king comes out to the fields outside the city. At such times, anyone can approach him. The king receives them all with a smiling face and a radiant countenance. But the interesting order is, only after you approach him does he smile. I thought that was a very interesting insight. That anyone can approach him, and then the king receives them all with a smiling face and a radiant countenance. So basically, you got to show up. You got to come, and then God smiles at you. In other words, God is waiting for you to now this is your turn, but God wants to show you how important this relationship is to God, and therefore God shows up. So his showing up is not to overwhelm us or to, kind of influence us in that sense. It's to kind of awaken within us. And so it's very subtle. It's a very delicate month, this month of Elul. And so God is showing up, but he's not showing up as the king. And even though he's showing up where we're working, he is also giving us our space and allowing us to find him. And therefore, guess why it's called Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, which means that we're the ones who are supposed to reach out to God. And then we're told that God shows up in the field. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I thought this was all about us trying to come to God. And the answer is yes, because when God shows up in the field, he's not overwhelming you. He's not even imposing on you. He's just standing there, and you can go over. And as soon as you're going to go over, all you have to do is approach him. As soon as you approach him, he breaks that into a smile. So he's not coming to you. He's just saying, I'm here. Are you interested in me? So whereas the month of Nisan is God showing up, and he shows up in his full impressive self, and that just like takes our breath away, and this therefore overwhelms us and in a sense imposes on us.
Like ready or not. In Nisan,
Exactly.
it's ready or not. And
Correct. Exactly. No, that's exactly the way to say it. Yes. So the month of Nisan is you ready or not, here we go. But the month of Elul, it's no. If you're not going to come over to me, if you're not interested in me, nothing's going to happen. But if you're interested in me, boy, it's so easy to reach me now. It's so easy. I'm right here. I've actually showed up next to you, and I'm not. There's no protocol here. Just come on over. And as soon as you come over, you get the biggest smile. You get the biggest embrace. It's going to be great. So that's the uniqueness of this month. It's kind of a very subtle and very, very special kind of energy that this month of Elul has. And since we've been learning so much in the Tanya all about this relationship with God and trying to get down into the bones of it and getting to understand it on a much, much deeper level. So the month of Elul now takes on a whole different, significance. There's one more thing I want to do with you about the month of Elul before we go to the Tanya, and that is let's go back here, month of Elul. I mean, there's tons of stuff here. So there are Elul observances, and here's a nutshell of them. And so what happens during this month? So it's a time to review one's deeds and spiritual progress. So there's what to do, and that's the way. So we're going to be preparing is by taking stock taking, introspection, and as the month of divine mercy and forgiveness. So that's really what this month is. It's divine mercy and forgiveness, which is when Moses is up on the mountain. He's getting the second set. So obviously it means that God is more open to anyone asking for forgiveness. So while you can get forgiveness any time of the year, it's on sale now. it's on clearance. I mean, this is the time to really, it's everything is on sale. All the tshuva products are all on sale. Elul is a most opportune time for teshuvah, return to God, and therefore we increase prayer, charity, and increased Ahavat Yisrael, love of a fellow Jew, in the quest of self-improvement and coming closer to God. Okay, we talked about the king is in the field. Now here are some of the basic customs. So each day of the month of Elul, except for Shabbat and the last day of Elul, we sound the shofar, the ram's horn, as a call to repentance. Number 2, when writing a letter or meeting or greeting one another, we add in Ketiva v'chatima tova, may you be inscribed and sealed for a good year. We also add chapter 27 of the book of Psalms, and we add that to the daily prayers. And we also have that the Baal Shem Tov instituted the custom of reciting 3 additional chapters of Psalms every day from the first of Elul until Yom Kippur. And so every day we read 3, and that way we add a whole bunch on Yom Kippur, and we complete the entire book of Psalms. Besides the monthly reading of it, we also do it 3 days, 3 chapters a day. And then we have Elul is a good time to have one's tefillin and mezuzot checked to make sure they're in good condition and fit for use. And then the last week of Elul, we have the Selichot prayers, which are recited. And on the first night, they're recited at midnight. On the following days, early in the morning. And so those are the observances. As you see, there's an entire section over here dedicated to the month of Elul. The 7 things you need to do in the month of Elul. There's a guide, there's study, there's audio classes, there's stories, videos. So we've got a lot of material here on what this month actually means. And you're welcome to explore this on your own.
Can I also point out that the book, the 60 Days book is like a workbook that helps you go through every single day with the various aspects of tshuva. So
yes.
I think that's what makes it such a special book too.
Yes, and we are hoping that we can have oh, look at that. Natalie's got her book too. Yes. We are hoping to be able to have that up on the screen because not everybody has it. I don't have it on the screen. I was not able to do it this time, but hopefully next Monday night I will have that. But I would recommend taking, I've given you a little bit of the book. Some of the things that we discussed, obviously everything we discussed is in the book, but there is actually a exercise for each day of what to do for the 60 days. So now that you have a kind of an intro, you can actually use that book daily, and we will do that each week while we're here. For the first half hour or so, we're going to be exploring that book. So if you don't have the book yet, you can order it. I put a link in last Friday's email, and then we'll have it hopefully up on the screen so that in case you don't have it, we can still follow along in the book together. So with that, we are going to transition over to, I wanted to share something before we go to the Tanya, and that is one of the things that we mentioned here is that prayer is something we're supposed to add in during this month. And I'm feeling very, very grateful that I did not let the Shabbats of Corona go to waste, and that I have put a lot of time into prayer during this time, because every day, I don't have much more time during the day than I would have if there wasn't Corona. Life is busy and things to do, but on Shabbat, normally I'd be in shul from 9 a.m. till 3:30, 4 p.m. So it was 7 hours that I was in the synagogue, and either I was giving a class or leading the service or reading the Torah. And now I'm basically home every Shabbat, and it's the summertime, so you have plenty of time. And so I've been spending a lot of time, as I've mentioned to you many times, I've been spending a lot of time doing prayers. And so this week was the Shabbat Mevorchim, which is the Shabbat that blesses the new month of Elul. And so the Chabad custom is that we read the entire book of Psalms. And I've read the book of Psalms many, many times. And you're supposed to read it it takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to read. And if you're reading it that fast, it's very, very hard to really get into it. And you're supposed to say it, supposed to say the book of Tehillim. But this week I decided I'm going to do something different. And I decided to just pay attention to what is the theme of each chapter. And so I would read the chapter, and then I would say to whoever was sitting around me, I told them the theme of the chapter. And it turned out that there basically were 4 themes that repeat themselves throughout the entire book of Psalms. One theme is the theme of gratitude. Thank you, God, for saving me. Then there is the theme of help me, God, and save me. And then there is how great God is. And then there is how much we need to improve, or, self-improvement, basically saying that what we need to do. And so it was fascinating to me to then look into the prayer book and to see how many of the prayers that we chose from the book of Psalms are actually asking God for help, and how many of them are thanking God for saving us, and how many of them are talking about God. And it's no surprise, but the vast majority of the Psalms that are chosen for prayer are not asking God for anything. They're not asking God to save us. They're actually talking about God, which is, that in itself is an interesting thing. My father will be talking about prayer. He's going to be doing it on, hopefully you saw that little teaser today, that we have that coming. I'll be sending out an email separately about that, but my father's going to be doing 2 classes Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m. on prayer. And so he's going to do the background kind of a little bit about prayer. But so obviously there's a lot of the prayer that is really talking about God. But when we do the selichot, or there are other parts of the prayer where we do ask God for help. So there are different times of the year that the prayer, the actual focus of the prayer changes. And so being in tune with those things is really, really interesting. And so, because he mentioned there at the end that one of the things that we do in the month of Elul is towards the end, we do selichot, which is, asking God, we need help. God, help us, help us, help us, help us, which is something we don't do on a regular daily basis that much. So it was just fascinating to see prayer through this lens, and to see it this way.